Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan Judd joining you for this edition of Nate at 8 on finally our first dry days so far for this month. It took a week, but we finally got it. The 7th day into the month, completely dry conditions across the area. And this is marking this just the start of an overall dry pattern that we'll be in for the most part here, extending over the next week. It's much drier. So the next 7 days, certainly drier with respect to what we had for the past 7 days. And what we're going to be tracking here for this edition of Nate at 8 is, while dry today, some showers are possible tomorrow. So this is still a dry pattern in place as we go through the weekend, but we can have some showers into our area for Thursday before we're likely dry back up then Friday through the weekend. And while temperatures are fairly similar to what we had for today, again, Thursday, a little bit of a cool down Friday. The weekend does end up warmer, so we get to enjoy dry conditions. If you've been wanting some warmer temperatures, that's on the way as well for this weekend. So without further ado, let's jump into things, and we'll be discussing, well, what we saw for today first, which again, this is a gorgeous day. Time lapse overlooking Wheeling, West Virginia. Mix of sun and clouds. We didn't quite have a sunny day, but nonetheless dry, right? So spotting at least some sunshine in place, some fair weather cumulus clouds. You can see they're bubbling up going throughout the day, but not tracking those cumulus clouds building to the extent where we'd be dealing with any rain or thunderstorms going throughout today. Our current temperatures are residing into the 60s, coming off of highs that made it to near 70 degrees this afternoon. And again, what we had for today, our temperatures trending about 10 degrees warmer. In fact, right at Wheeling, Iowa County Airport, right on par with that. Right at 70 today, and well, it was at 60 yesterday for a high temperature, so exactly 10 degrees apart. Overall, we've been dealing with a mix of some cooler days and milder days. Only 180-degree days so far for this month, right at the beginning of the month, and from there, we've been trending a little bit cooler, and we're getting into not only a drier pattern, but overall a warmer pattern. So 180-degree days so far this month with a weekend, but we're going to notice likely at least a couple more here, even over the next week of these 80-degree highs. So we're going to start to spot those temperatures picking back up at this point going through the middle of the month. And like I mentioned, we've been seeing some precipitation, at least some. I know on the 4th, we didn't have a whole lot, but still measured some precipitation at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport on the 4th. And outside of that, dealing with at least a quarter of an inch or more of rain at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Again, breaking that today. Not measuring any precipitation. We finally get our dry May day, 7 days into the month. And the precipitation we've seen so far for the month has put us ahead almost 2 inches above what we typically have this time of the month. We're sitting close to about 3/4 of an inch of total precipitation into that, into 7 days into the month of May. So certainly trending above normal so far for the month with a wet start to May. And so far for the year, actually trending a little bit under by about 1/4 of an inch. We're in a deficit by about 1/4 of an inch of rain so far for the year. Joe joining us this evening saying, good evening, beautiful day. It was indeed, wasn't it, Joe? Certainly nice to spot some dry conditions. And while not completely sunny skies, certainly at least some sunshine with dry conditions made for a pleasant Wednesday across the area. And the mix of sun and clouds we saw for today will carry over into tomorrow. We'll deal with these partly to mostly cloudy skies as we go through the night. We're not going to be tracking any precipitation as we go through the night. And we'll see our temperatures ultimately end up very similar to what we have for this morning. Tomorrow morning. There's not much difference. If we're seeing a difference between these low and high temperatures tomorrow, it's likely less than a couple degrees. So we're talking about a degree or two difference possibly, but it's very similar in temperature wise. Really talking about a couple degrees possibly difference. It's not really distinguishable. It's going to feel similar to how it felt today again tomorrow, because we'll see these low temperatures fall back lower 50s again, right on par with this morning's lows again Thursday morning, and then our high temperatures are ending up back near 70 for tomorrow afternoon. So very, very similar temperature-wise. Of course, the big difference is that potential for rain, and we're not going to deal with a rain chance to start off the day. This is into the afternoon and evening. Now, notice just how widely scattered this is. So, this precipitation that we see develop, it is hit or miss. Now, these high resolution models, they're going to do their best trying to depict where exactly we see this precipitation set up. But, there is still some limitations in the advancement of these weather models, and it's picking up more on the coverage. That's what we want to be looking at, more so on the coverage of the rain tomorrow, not on the precise location of where the model's depicting it. So, could it shape up to be this? Yes, but there is still some limitations of these weather models. They do a good job depicting on how much coverage we're going to have in terms of the precipitation, but when we're dealing with these hit or miss showers, these models are going to struggle to pinpoint the precise location of where we're going to see them. But again, just emphasizing the fact of how hit or miss this is, what Futurecast is showing, that's likely what we're going to see set up for tomorrow. So that being said, while some of us can pick up that round of rain or two tomorrow, some of us can stay completely dry. That's just how it's going to be for the latter part of Thursday. So that being said, it's certainly not a real washout for tomorrow. There's still a lot of dry times to be had. And again, for some of us, I think we still stay completely dry during that time. Rain chances will then lower Thursday night going into Friday. Still dealing with some cloud cover at this point before those clouds will eventually clear out, then likely for the day on Friday, as the rain chances will just completely drop off at that point. And again, we are a bit cooler Friday. Highs are likely back in the 60s. And then from there, we'll start the warming trend again by this weekend, as those high temperatures will climb back into the 70s. And we're dealing with a lot of sunshine this weekend. Overall, it is looking nice. And again, outside of this, few showers for the latter part of Thursday, maybe a rumble of thunder, but no severe weather, no flooding, nothing impactful later into the day tomorrow, just mainly showers. But again, maybe a rumble of thunder, but not anticipating anything impactful later into the day Thursday. The most impact is going to be is just a nuisance to have to dodge some rain if we're out and about tomorrow evening. That's going to be it. So again, nothing that's of worrisome with those showers later into the day Thursday. And again, after that, we dry right back up likely then through the weekend. And even into Monday, dry weather does look to hold. But at that point, we are going to be watching an increase in cloud cover out ahead of the next round of rain. So there's only a slight chance for a shower later in the day Monday. Likely going to stay dry by Tuesday into Wednesday. Then is when showers will turn likely. So as we do look into the middle of next week, we are going to start to see at least a couple days there with the wet weather returning. But at least here near term, going through Mother's Day weekend, this is a great stretch of weather. So if you have any outdoor plans with your moms, that's going to be some great weather to make any outdoor plans. And with this warmer pattern in place as well, looking into the middle of the month, it's going to be, I think, a good time as well if you want to do some planning this weekend. I think it's going to be a good time to do it. Our cloud cover the next 5 days, again, still dealing with the partly to mostly cloudy skies on Thursday, but from there, mostly sunny Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll start to see an increase in cloud cover Monday, but still some sunshine to be had on Monday. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, it's back to a lot more cloud cover at that point, looking ahead next week. And like I mentioned, these temperatures during this stretch, this is going to be a fairly warm stretch of weather coming our way. We do have the little bit of a cool down Friday coming off those highs around 70 that we had for today. The temperatures will pick back up well in the 70s this weekend, near 80 Monday, and the cooler days next week still going to be warmer than the cooler days we had for this week. And I think looking at the coolest low temperature that I think we're going to have looking ahead here going into the middle of the month will likely arrive into the weekend, and we'll be falling to around 40. Maybe some of those colder spots make it just into the 30s. And outside of that, I don't foresee us getting anywhere back close to mid lower 30s when we're talking about frost or freeze concerns. The closest we're going to get is likely Saturday morning, and that's when we're still about a handful of degrees above the threshold where frost is of concern. So, if you hold out past Saturday morning, and if you plant later in the day, Saturday or Sunday, you are good to go. Typically we're saying wait until the middle of May, but we can map out here the middle of May over the next 10 days. And it's just a warm pattern in the middle of the month. So, at this point, I would say, hold off. I would, if you can hold off until after Saturday morning, because some of those colder locations, maybe getting close to some frost potential. But, even then, I think most of us avoid it on Saturday morning. But once we get past that, we are nowhere near the mid 30s to the point where frost can develop. But we're nowhere near that likely once we get past Saturday morning, looking ahead through the middle of the month. So good conditions, I think, this weekend setting up. If you want to do some planning on Mother's Day weekend, I think it's a good weekend to do so. The weather's certainly looking nice, so we could finally get out and catch up on some yard work. I don't know if anyone here is joining me in that regard, but it's been hard to try to mow with all this rain that we've had. 6 straight days where we dealt with rain. And today, thankfully, dealing with some dry conditions and more coming here as we go through the weekend. So finally getting a good chance to catch up on some yard work with the nice weather looking ahead. Renee says, good evening. Glad the warm temperatures are coming back. Certainly are. Yeah. After, temperatures similar to what we had for today, again, Thursday, a little bit of a cool down Friday. And then, certainly warming up this weekend. I would say Sunday is certainly a warm day as well as Monday, and just a little bit of a cool down likely in the middle of next week. And then we're right back in the 80s late next week as we'll deal with potentially some more showers around next Thursday and Friday. So, not to say those days are washouts, but we could get back into a wetter pattern returning around the middle of next week, or there's that potential for at least a shower Tuesday all the way into next Friday. And then we are going to keep an eye on that. Yes, we can get back into a bit of a wetter pattern, but at least here near term, as we extend here over the next most of the next week is going to likely end up mostly dry, right? There's not too much rain around at all going into the latter part of Thursday, and then completely dry going through the weekend. Tuesday to Wednesday could be our wet days here over the next 7 days. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you had a wonderful day, enjoyed our first dry May day here in the Ohio Valley. And again, from this time forward, we're tracking some pleasant weather really going through the weekend, and not too much rain. Again, not too much rain tomorrow. All right, there's some showers, but overall it's still looking mostly dry. Just a few showers to dodge later into the day tomorrow, and then likely drying back up then for the weekend. And just some beautiful weather arriving for this weekend, a far cry from what we had this past weekend where it was just dreary and wet. Or if not damp. It wasn't too wet Sunday, but just damp. And certainly not going to be the case as we go through this weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, you can catch me coming up News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. And of course, you can catch me coming up for that next edition of Nate at 8 tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. Until then, have a great night, and I'll see you on the next edition of Nate at 8.